When producers create a movie, they obviously do so with the goal of making it a successful project, but unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes projects fail, and these failures are often unexpected. Failure isn't the same for everyone, though, because while you might like a movie, the majority of people may not. This is what we'll be analyzing in this video, as the movies on this list are projects that failed because most people labeled them as terrible. For this list, I'm only going to include movies that almost everyone is familiar with or that you might know the main characters from, since there are too many 3D animated movies released every day, and many of them flop. If you haven't seen any of these movies, I suggest you watch them at your own risk, as you'll probably get bored quickly. Number 10, Cars 2. Despite the success of the first and third movies, Cars 2 was a terrible failure. This film tried to give more prominence to Mater, and that probably changed the essence of the story. We must admit that Mater is an excellent character, but that doesn't mean he should be the main one, as secondary characters sometimes only work well in supporting roles. Luckily, all those mistakes were fixed in the third movie, and the Cars franchise managed to bounce back. Number 9, Planes. This is one of those movies I personally liked, but we must admit that most people hated it. The only logical explanation I can offer is that maybe people didn't like how unoriginal it was, since Planes is set in the same universe as Cars. That makes it feel like we're seeing almost the same thing we saw in Cars, but with Planes, which doesn't offer much originality. The storyline is also pretty similar, as it's about a plane that wants to compete and be the fastest, basically the same goal as the main character in Cars. Number 8, Chicken Little. This movie has some positive aspects, but unfortunately, the story is so simple that it made us feel like we were wasting our time. On top of that, the plot is very similar to old folktales, so there isn't much originality. This movie might work as a TV series for a younger audience, but making it into a feature film may have been too ambitious. While there are moments when we can enjoy the movie, it's still one of the most criticized by audiences. Number 7, The Angry Birds Movie. For those living under a rock and unfamiliar with these birds, I can tell you that these characters come from a mobile game that almost everyone used to have on their phones, though nobody plays it anymore. At the time the movie was made, there were still many people playing the game, but that doesn't mean it was a good idea to turn it into a film. I do want to mention something positive about this project. The design and animation were spectacular. But despite that effort, it wasn't enough, because the most important thing in a movie is the story, and here they gave us the same storyline we'd already seen in the game. Number 6, Shark Tale. This fish is one of the weirdest characters you'll see in an animated movie, but it's weird in a negative way. The fish's face looks too much like a human, and that makes it very odd. Even more strange is the fact that the voice actors behind these characters are amazing, yet the audience still didn't like the movie. Many people even called it one of DreamWorks' worst movies, and others said it was one of the worst animated films in history. Obviously, that's not true, because at number 1 on this list, you'll learn about the actual worst animated movie ever, and I think we can all agree on it. Number 5, Star Wars, The Clone Wars. First off, I'm a Star Wars fan, so fellow fans of the franchise can't criticize me for including this movie on the list. Let's talk about something positive. The visual design of this movie was excellent, as they used a very different style from what most companies typically use. This design style is perfect for the Star Wars universe, but unfortunately, movies aren't made just for the fans of a franchise. The main criticism from reviewers was that the movie is hard to follow unless you've seen a lot of other Star Wars material to piece the story together. Number 4, Ice Age: Collision Course. The Ice Age franchise started off great, with an original concept and well-developed characters. But this movie is a classic case of trying to milk a franchise because the first and second movies were so good. To give you some context, Ice Age: Collision Course is the 5th movie in the franchise, and basically the last one with the full group, as the 6th movie focuses only on Buck. The producers drained everything they could and tried to recreate the success of the first movie, but by then, fans were tired of these characters. Number 3, The Emoji Movie. We all use emojis at some point in our lives, as they've become a special kind of language. After all, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But despite the popularity of these little icons, that doesn't mean you can make a movie about them and expect it to succeed. It was honestly a pretty absurd idea, and while you might enjoy this film if you're into that kind of thing, the truth is, it's still a pretty boring movie. Some people said they hated it so much they couldn't even finish watching it, leaving the theater halfway through. Others mentioned that, despite its bright colors, the storyline was just silly and over the top. Number 2, Saving Bikini Bottom: The Sandy Cheeks Movie. I think we all know SpongeBob and are aware of the success he's had. We also know many of the characters from the show, but that doesn't mean you can just make a movie about some of them. Let's be honest, a lot of SpongeBob's supporting characters are great, but what made this franchise successful was its main character. In Saving Bikini Bottom, Sandy is the main character, and that was one of the reasons this project failed. On top of that, sometimes it's just not a good idea to turn 2D characters into 3D, as they often lose their magic. Number 1, Megamind 2. The real name of this movie is Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate, but we're all going to know it as Megamind 2 because it's the sequel to Megamind. This is the worst disaster we've ever seen in a 3D animated movie, and the failure started right with the title. The name is too long, the animation is terrible, the story is boring, and the whole project feels like a low-budget TV show. The first Megamind was one of my favorite movies, so I had high hopes that Megamind 2 would be just as good, but it was the biggest disappointment of my life. Watching this movie is the worst kind of suffering imaginable, and honestly, I wish it had never existed. Megamind 2 tarnished the excellence of the first film, and now we all have to live with the fact that the Megamind franchise ended in disaster. What makes any movie great is having a character that captures all your attention and connects with you at every moment. Sometimes these characters aren't the protagonist, but that doesn't mean they lack that special trait that resonates with the audience and makes the film more entertaining. Number 20, Flint. This mad scientist is part of the movie Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and honestly, I think he was the best part of the film. The movie's concept was pretty crazy and over the top, but the character was perfect for this story. Number 19, Anxiety. This is the newest character on this list, featured in the movie Inside Out. Literally, this character was the reason the movie was so successful, and the development of this character was excellent. Number 18, Hector. This is proof that you don't need to be the main character to be the best one in the movie. This musician captured all our attention. While Miguel was a great character, the truth is that the best parts of the movie were always with Hector. Number 17, Nick. Zootopia has been one of the best movies in terms of visuals, but its main character wasn't that great. However, Nick saved the movie, and this character drew all the audience's attention. Honestly, without him, the movie would have been a failure, and no one would have liked it. Number 16, Alberto. The beginning of the movie Luca was a bit boring, and that's because we hadn't met Alberto yet. This character brought energy to the story, and whenever he appeared, we were all glued to the screen. His lines were the best, and his sad backstory also made us connect with him. Number 15, Ember. In Elemental, we had many great characters, but this fiery woman stood out. Ember was the heart of the movie, and her story allowed us to relate to her. This character was well developed, and her growth was spectacular. Number 14, Skipper. Madagascar was quite entertaining, but the truth is that Skipper was a key player in making everything flow better. This character was so amazing that they had to create a spin-off series for these penguins, and it ran for 2 seasons. It's rare for a supporting character to shine since they have less screen time, but that didn't stop Skipper. Number 13, Spider-Man. I think Miles Morales was such a great character that everyone instantly fell in love with him, and that's tough when you're portraying such a beloved hero like Spider-Man. Everyone was used to Peter Parker, which made the change risky, but this character was so well done that he connected with audiences quickly. Number 12, Minions. Now we're getting serious on this list as we approach characters that have had a major impact on animation fans. The Minions are so amazing that, even though we don't understand their language, they still manage to connect with us. Number 11, Sid. This sloth is what made Ice Age such an iconic movie, thanks to being the perfect character for natural comedy. In the movie, there's another character that makes us laugh with exaggerated antics, but Sid manages to do it effortlessly. Number 10, Ralph. This movie has 2 great characters that create a perfect balance, but I have to say I chose Ralph because I could watch several movies focused solely on him. I can't say the same for the other characters, which proves that Ralph was the center of attention in the story, and we all easily connected with him. Number 9, Wall-E. You know a character is perfect when they capture your attention without saying a single word, and that's exactly what this little robot did for most of the movie. For some unknown reason, this character managed to grab our focus, and by the end, we all loved this robot like it was our own pet. Number 8, Mater. I'll say this as kindly as possible, without Mater, Cars would have been a total disaster. This character was the only one that brought life to the movie because, although it had a good story, it was honestly a bit dull when this character wasn't around. Number 7, Poe. The reason there have been 4 movies and a TV series from this franchise is due to how well this panda connects with the audience. This character brings comedy, action, drama, energy, and manages to tug at your deepest emotions. Number 6, Donkey. Shrek is such an iconic movie and has become one of the best in history. Obviously, Donkey plays a huge role in this, being one of the most loved and funniest characters around. This character is so impactful that he's beloved even in other languages, which is why Shrek was so successful internationally. Number 5, Dory. The story of Finding Nemo was quite deep and filled with drama, but we have to admit that the main characters were a bit boring. However, Dory was the spark that ignited the whole thing, and she was such a great character that they made her the protagonist in the second movie. Number 4, Joy. Almost all the characters in Inside Out are great, but we have to acknowledge that Joy is the one steering the ship since she holds our attention the whole time. Even though she's supposed to be a simple character representing happiness, she manages to create all the drama necessary to connect with the audience. Number 3, Mike. I could watch 100 Monsters Incorporated movies if Mike were the main character in all of them. This character is so perfect that no matter what he does, he always grabs our attention. Mike's personality is very relatable, making him a character who feels grounded in the reality we all live in. Number 2, Shrek. We already talked about Shrek earlier because Donkey is such a great character, but Shrek is another iconic figure in animation history. This green ogre also has all the traits needed to connect with the audience, and his story mirrors the inner struggles we all face. At some point in life, we've all felt rejected, and many dream of finding that seemingly impossible love. Number 1, Woody. The Toy Story movies have always had many characters, but despite this, Woody has always been the central figure behind all the success. This cowboy was the character that started it all in 3D animated movies, and if he had been a simple character, the history of 3D animation would have been very different. 2D animated movies have stood out for having many songs, but this hasn't happened as much with 3D animated films. However, there are some 3D animated movies that have had iconic songs, and in this list, we will mention the 10 movies that have had the best songs. Number 10, Happy Feet. This Penguin movie had a lot of energy because, in addition to having excellent songs, it also had many dances and was very fun from beginning to end. The main character was the only one who couldn't sing, but he danced impressively. This movie had spectacular voices, and that was one of its best qualities. Happy Feet knew how to integrate its story with all the songs, as music was essentially the central point of the entire story. Number 9, Frozen 2. Despite being an excellent movie, it ranks lower on the list because the other movies are more spectacular. However, this doesn't mean Frozen 2 had bad songs. The truth is that Frozen 2 has iconic songs that are still sung today, and I bet many of you know the lyrics well. My only criticism is that the songs weren't as well integrated into the story, and perhaps we feel this way because the first movie had a higher level. Number 8, Moana. This movie reminds us of the classic 2D animated films because the songs are fun and create a very entertaining animation. The songs in this movie are also very exciting, and the voices they used are spectacular. Although Moana doesn't have many iconic songs, the few it does have are excellent, and that's why it deserves this spot. Another thing worth mentioning is that actor Dwayne Johnson is not a singer, yet one of the best songs in the movie is sung by him. This is what makes a song incredible. It connects with the audience, regardless of whether the singer has an amazing voice. Number 7, Encanto. Please, let's keep quiet because in this channel, we don't talk about Bruno. One of the most impactful songs in the world of cinema was the one about Bruno, and even though this movie has many excellent songs, that one had the biggest impact. This movie also managed to create very different songs and gave us unusual rhythms, as we've grown accustomed to the same type of music in animated films. Another excellent aspect is that the songs featured a lot of Latin rhythms, which probably helped the movie stand out in terms of its music. Number 6, Trolls 2. We can't talk about musical movies without mentioning Trolls, and this sequel was excellent. All the fans of this movie know the songs well, and the best thing about them is their rhythms, which make you want to dance. The big advantage of the Trolls movies is that their songs are performed by famous singers, and that's why many of these songs became so popular. Despite this, it's important to know how to make a song iconic, and Trolls 2 succeeded in doing this. Number 5, Sing 2. This movie was made for its fans to love music, and although it might not be on the same level as the first movie, this sequel has been one of the best movies dedicated to music. What I love about Sing is that the music doesn't feel forced. They always know how to complement the story with the songs, and the producers know how to pick the right songs. The story of this movie was spectacular, but I have to say that the songs took it to another level, and that's why it's become one of the best 3D animated films. Number 4, Frozen. We can't talk about movies with the best songs without mentioning Frozen, as its music has impacted people of all ages. It's probably one of the few movies where almost all the songs became iconic, and all the fans know them. Normally, in movies with lots of songs, there are always a few that aren't as good and are quickly forgotten, but that's not the case with Frozen. After finishing this video, do you want to build a snowman? Number 3, Trolls. This is the movie that broke all records and seemed to be made to have us dancing in the theater from the start. No matter how many years go by, the songs from this movie never get old. You can listen to them 20 years after the release, and they'll still feel new. What I love most about Trolls is that the songs get you moving, make you happy, and make you want to dance all day. As I mentioned earlier, one of the big positives of the Trolls movies is that their songs are performed by famous singers, and obviously, this helps make the songs easier to remember. Number 2, Coco. If you're a music fan, then you have to see this movie because, in my opinion, it's one of the best movies ever made. This film took Mexican music to the next level and was able to portray the culture in all its songs. The story, the lyrics, the music, it all touches your heart, and if you're one of those people who didn't cry watching this movie, let me tell you, you've got a heart of stone. Even though this movie didn't have as many songs as others, the truth is that all the songs it has are impactful and emotional in some way. The roller coaster of emotions is like an amusement park. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you want to dance, and sometimes you want to cry. If you speak Spanish, I recommend watching this movie in that language because the songs are much better in Spanish. And if you're Latino, you might feel like you already know some of these songs. Number 1, Sing. All the movies we've mentioned in this list are spectacular, but Sing is the movie made for music, made to inspire, and made to uplift the soul. If you're someone who wants to be a singer, then you must watch this movie because it shows us true inspiration and makes us feel like we're all singers. What I love most about this movie is that it has classic songs that feel like new songs. Some of these songs I didn't even know, and I got to enjoy all this classic music that I had never heard before. The world of music is something incredible, and Sing shows us this artistic universe in a brilliant way. In this movie, it's not about the voices, the lyrics, or the rhythm, it's about the connection that each song creates with the audience, and anyone who watches this movie will feel it. These songs touch your soul so deeply that you'll never forget them. In fact, as I'm writing this video, I feel like I'm listening to my favorite song from the movie, and I'm filled with emotion because it's one of those songs that touches your heart. Animated movies are usually created for a younger audience, which is why their stories are often aimed at entertaining viewers. Despite this, we all know that many animated films have deep stories, and some have taken that depth to another level. When you sit down to watch a 3D animated film, you usually expect to have fun, but sometimes you end up crying and just can't stop. Let's talk about the 7 3D animated films that have made viewers cry the most, as some of them seem to have been made solely to break your heart. Number 7, Elemental. This is one of the most recent films on this list, having premiered in June 2023. The story is about immigrants and the diversity of people in different places. It also touches on acceptance and understanding the differences in others. Although the writers chose such a profound topic, the producers were able to convey it to the audience in a way that was easy to understand, while also allowing us to grasp the emotions of people who face many challenges when arriving in other countries. Another important theme in this film is family and personal growth to pursue your own dreams. At various moments, the movie begins to drill into your soul, and many of us can relate to some of the themes in this great story. Number 6, Inside Out 2. This movie is also very recent, having premiered in June 2024. While the first film in this saga wasn't quite as emotional, Inside Out 2 definitely is. The story revolves around the struggles of adolescence, addressing various issues we all experienced at some point. In this sequel, we get new characters, and one of them is at the heart of the film's emotional conflict. The character representing anxiety causes the main problem that leads to one of the most moving scenes in cinema. When Riley has an anxiety attack, all of her other emotions give her an inner hug. This moment is meant to show us that when we're going through difficult emotional dilemmas, we need to embrace ourselves to push through, demonstrating that self-love is the first step. I think everyone who watched this movie cried during that moment, and it will forever be a significant moment in cinema history. Number 5, Toy Story 3. The Toy Story films have always been fun, full of action, drama, and comedy. But the third installment of the saga was very different, being a much deeper drama from the start. In this movie, we see that Andy is no longer going to play with his toys, and this sets the stage for the sadness that follows. The toys then end up at Sunnyside Daycare, a place full of other toys, where we meet one of the best villains in animated film history, Lotso. Andy's toys endure a lot of suffering there, and it starts breaking your heart, as we've loved these toys for so long. Later, the toys are about to be incinerated, and they all hold hands to stay together. This moment is so sad that it's become an iconic scene in cinema history, one of the most painful moments for any Toy Story fan. At that point, we really thought it was the end for the toys, and Toy Story 3 felt like it was going to be the final movie in the saga. Another tear-jerking moment is the ending when Andy has to give his toys to Bonnie, and there was no escaping the tears at that point. Number 4, Sing. What's great about this movie is that it tells many different stories, and it's likely you can identify with at least one of them. One of the best stories is Johnny's, a gorilla who wants to be a singer, but his father is a thief and expects his son to follow in his footsteps. Johnny is too embarrassed to tell his father he wants to pursue music because he's been raised to think that kind of dream isn't for strong men. Despite this, Johnny auditions for a singing competition to try and achieve his dream of becoming an artist. When his father finds out and realizes Johnny abandoned him in the middle of a robbery to sing, he's deeply disappointed in his son. This breaks Johnny's heart, but he continues to pursue his dream and sings in the competition. His father watches him on TV, and it's at this moment that anyone would start crying. Johnny's father feels so proud of his son that he realizes he was wrong, doing everything he can to get to the performance and congratulate him for singing so wonderfully. Number 3, Frozen. This story has several moments that make you feel very sad, thanks to a visually perfect narrative that allows you to connect with the characters on a deeper level. The story centers on two sisters, one of whom is afraid of hurting others, while the other just wants to help her accept herself and be happy. This story touches on self-love, acceptance, family love, and recognizing when we need help from others. While there are other important themes in the movie, I think these are the ones that hit us in the heart and made us cry at several points in the story. I believe the songs contributed a lot to those emotional moments, with their style, rhythm, and lyrics helping to make these themes truly heartbreaking. Number 2, Coco. The story of Coco is so complete that it gradually builds up to one of the saddest yet happiest moments in animated film history. The movie focuses on Miguel, a boy who wants to be a singer, but his family despises music, making it seem like an impossible dream. Coco, Miguel's great-grandmother, had been waiting for her father to return ever since she was a child, and this is the key to the whole story. Throughout the film, we sang "Remember Me" without realizing it would become the most moving song in animated film history. There are many tear-jerking moments in this movie, but the most heartbreaking one is when Miguel sings "Remember Me" to his great-grandmother, and she begins to stir. This scene will forever be etched in our hearts, and we'll always remember that song. Number 1, Up. There was no way this movie wouldn't be at the top of this list, as from the very beginning, it delivers a powerful blow to the heart. The story of this humble couple, who fall in love as children and spend their entire lives together, takes an unexpected turn. They had many dreams, but sometimes life is so difficult that it prevents us from achieving all the goals we've set, and perhaps we lack the courage to take the necessary risks. As a result, time passes us by, and when we finally realize it, it's too late. This is what happened to this couple, and starting to cry from the very beginning is what made up one of the saddest 3D animated films in history.